Ever get that feeling like you're tackling a new language? You're feeling pretty good. You got a handle on the nouns, verbs are vibing.
Right.
And then, bam, pronouns hit you like a curveball.
Totally.
So today we are diving deep, my friends, into the fascinating and yes, sometimes quirky world of German pronouns.
And let me tell you, having spent years really immersing myself in the German language, those pronouns, they can be a real adventure.
Okay, so before we unpack the specifics, our sources gave us this pretty extensive list of German pronoun types. And we've got personal pronouns, possessive pronouns, demonstrative pronouns. Feeling pretty familiar so far, right?
Yeah.
But then we get into determinative, reflexive, relative, interrogative, and indefinite pronouns.
Whoa!
That's a mouthful. Where do we even begin?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot to take in at first glance. I think what we have to remember is that underneath all those categories, there's this beautiful logic.
Okay.
And a fundamental concept to grasp early on is that, unlike English, German pronouns, they're sticklers for agreement.
Oh.
They always have to match their antecedent in gender, number, and case, which English is not so strict on.
Hold on. Case. For those of us who might need a little refresher, what does that even mean? In grammar speak, case.
You're right, yeah. I should clarify. So in grammar, case refers to the function of a noun or a pronoun in a sentence.
Okay.
It tells us whether it's the subject, the object, the indirect object, and so on.
Got it.
German uses these cases way more extensively than English does, which is why this whole pronoun agreement thing is so important.
So it's like each case is a different outfit the pronoun has to wear depending on its grammatical role.
100%.
Love it.
And just to make things even more interesting, German nouns have genders.
Oh, yeah.
You got masculine, feminine, or neuter.
Right.
Which also affects the pronouns used to replace them.
Our sources had some intriguing examples about this, like das im Schrank, meaning the thing in the cupboard, and das auf den Tisch, meaning the thing on the table. I noticed they both use das. What's the deal with that?
You've hit on a key point. So in those examples, das is stepping in because the gender of the object either isn't clear or maybe it doesn't really matter in the context.
Yeah.
It's like a catch-all pronoun for those situations.
That's fascinating, especially for us English speakers who are just used to it.
Right.
Speaking of which, our sources mention that even words like birthday, Geburtstag, are assigned a gender in German.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe this, but it's considered masculine.
Well, it's true.
Wild.
You'd use meaning he, to refer to a birthday in German.
Wow.
It seems strange at first, but once you get used to it, it becomes second nature. It's all about internalizing that grammatical gender system.
Now, on to those genitive personal pronouns. Our notes hinted at something kind of surprising.
Okay.
That they're not always about possession.
Yeah.
Even though the name kind of suggests otherwise.
Right.
That seems like counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does. Many people assume genitive personal pronouns always equal possession. And while they can be used that way in certain older texts, modern German actually uses possessive pronouns like, mein, dein, to express ownership way more commonly.
So if I hear someone use minor, what are they trying to say? What other roles do these genitive pronouns play?
It's more about how, language just evolves over time.
Okay.
And nowadays, you'll mostly encounter them in certain, set phrases and situations.
Okay.
Take, for example, the phrase gedenke meiner, meaning remember me.
Mm-hmm.
He uses meiner, which is the genitive form of ich, meaning I.
So even though we translate it as remember me, it's technically, in German, it's in the genitive case.
Exactly.
That's wild.
Although, even that usage is becoming less common.
Really?
Our sources pointed out this fantastic Essex saying, der Dativ ist dem Genitiv sein Tod. It means the dative case is the death of the genitive case.
Wow. The death of the genitive, that's intense. What led linguists to use such a strong phrase, the death?
It highlights this kind of ongoing shift in German where the dative case is often taking over the roles that were traditionally held by the genitive case. It's like the dative case is the new kid on the block, it's cool, it's modern, and the genitive is becoming, a little old-fashioned.
So it's kind of like in English how we don't really use whom that much anymore, even though it's technically correct.
100%.
Right. Yeah, language is constantly evolving.
Exactly.
In German and English.
Yeah.
Speaking of evolving, shall we tackle those shape-shifting relative pronouns next?
Let's do it.
Our notes mention they can get pretty complex.
They certainly can. Remember how we talked about cases and how they determine the function of a word in a sentence?
Right.
Well, relative pronouns love to show off their versatility by changing their form depending on their case.
So they show up ready to party with a whole outfit change for every occasion.
You could say that. Now, our sources pointed out that instead of just using der, das, or die as relative pronouns, you can sometimes use welcher, welches, or welcha. Any guesses as to why someone might choose to use those instead?
I want to guess it has something to do with those cases we talked about.
Yes.
Maybe certain forms are more precise depending on the grammatical role.
You're on the right track. It often boils down to clarity, especially when you have, multiple relative clauses nested within a sentence.
Okay.
Using welcher in all its forms can really make things easier to follow. It's like choosing a more precise tool, like from your grammar toolbox, to create a more elegant sentence.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So it's less about right or wrong and more about style and clarity.
Exactly.
Okay. I can dig it. Onwards and upwards. What about demonstrative pronouns? From what I gathered, they seem pretty self-explanatory. They point at things, right?
They do, but naturally, German likes to add its own flair.
Of course.
Take derselbe and der gleiche, for instance. Both translate to the same in English, but they have subtly different meanings.
Ooh, I love those subtle but important nuances. Tell me more.
Okay. Imagine you're at a German car dealership. You point at a sleek convertible and say, Ich habe dasselbe Auto wie du. That means you have the exact same car, same make, model, year, maybe even color.
Wow.
But if you say, Ich habe das gleiche Auto wie du, you're just saying you have a similar car, maybe same brand, same model, but not necessarily identical.
So derselbe is like saying, we're practically driving twins.
Yes.
And der gleiche is like, hey, we both have good taste in cars.
Precisely. It's a small distinction, but, understanding it can make a big difference.
Right.
Now, before we wrap up, let's do a quick rundown of those interrogative pronouns. These are the ones we use to ask questions.
Right.
So we've got the basics. We've got there for who, was for what. How about which?
Ah, good one. How do we ask which in German?
Yeah.
You must be similar, right?
It is.
It's like a question word staple.
Absolutely. In German, you would ask which using the word welcher. However, just like those relative pronouns we talked about earlier, welcher likes to change its form depending on the gender in case of the noun it's referring to.
Of course it does. German grammar loves a good twist. It's like that unexpected plot point in a movie that keeps you on the edge of your seat. But hey, that's how we learn, right? By embracing those curveballs.
Exactly. And when you start to grasp those nuances, you unlock a deeper appreciation for the structure and the logic that's woven into the German language. It's like solving a puzzle where each element, even those seemingly tricky pronouns, has a specific place and purpose.
It's like those pronouns are the key to unlocking like a deeper level of understanding, right?
Yes.
Suddenly you're not just like stringing words together, but you're actually thinking about their relationships.
Oh.
Those subtle shades of meaning, you become like a grammatical architect of sorts.
I love that analogy. It perfectly captures the essence of mastering German grammar. It's less about, rote memorization and more about appreciating the precision, the elegance of the language.
Yeah, totally.
It's about understanding the why behind those seemingly complex rules.
Well said. Well, folks, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of German pronouns. Hopefully, you've surfaced with a newfound appreciation for these grammatical building blocks, and maybe even a few aha moments along the way.
And for those of you who are feeling adventurous, I encourage you to keep exploring. German grammar has so much more to offer. There are all these fascinating quirks and features just waiting to be discovered.
It's true. Think of it this way. The more you understand about German grammar, the more confident you become in, wielding this beautiful language.
Yeah.
So keep practicing. Stay curious, and most importantly, have fun with it. Until next time on The Deep Dive.